This is a story about empowerment and passion, and older women breaking down stereotypes and leading the way to social justice. The 5 women portrayed here are fictitious, but they reflect the common themes I heard as I crossed the country, meeting and speaking with women involved in the Grandmothers to Grandmothers campaign. This campaign supports the Stephen Lewis Foundation in the fight to turn the tide on HIV and AIDS in Africa.
I've always been an activist in some way. I got into trouble when I was a kid because I couldn't stand it when things were unfair. It's almost like there's an activism gene in your DNA. Our mothers and grandmothers were advocates for their families, but they didn't have the same opportunities we did. We're the first generation to have reliable birth control, access to higher education, to be married women in the workforce. We grew up with the women's movement, the peace movement, fighting for social justice. I went to the 2006 gathering when the Stephen Lewis Foundation brought 100 grandmothers from sub-Saharan Africa to meet with 200 Canadian grandmothers. The African grandmothers told their stories. I was overwhelmed by their courage and the situation they were in. When I left, I knew that doing nothing was not an option.
I had no experience of activism or leadership growing up. I left university to get married and have children. Worked in sales. My first marriage was a disaster. But later on I found my soulmate. When he died, I was devastated, alone, depressed, and searching for meaning in my life. I tried volunteer work, but they saw me as a retired older woman who should be happy to lick envelopes instead of making a real contribution. I heard Stephen Lewis speak on the radio about AIDS in Africa. It made me sad and angry. Then I heard a woman talking at my church about the Grandmothers campaign and a group that had formed in my area. I went to a meeting and immediately felt like I belonged. My opinions were appreciated. I discovered I was skilled at researching. I'm good at getting the facts. The first time I spoke at a regional event, I was terrified. When I did my first media interview, my armpits were soaked. But it got easier. When I went with some others in my group to visit our MP, I was really well prepared. I knew more than he did, and I knew how to make our case. Have I become a bona fide activist in my 60s? You betcha.
To me, the Granny movement is about building community and the power of community to mobilize people and create a more just society. The Grandmothers campaign has 3 communities: our own groups, the communities we live in, and the global village. My Granny group works at all of these levels. We work by consensus and avoid bureaucracy like the plague. Everyone is welcome, and we respect each other's strengths and abilities. We really care about each other, and we have fun together. Through the events we put on, we raise money, awareness, and consciousness, and we build community. We partner with other groups, like churches, artists, and businesses. Like the time the Aboriginal community joined us in a drumming event. And one of our members works with teachers and students at the local school. The Grannies understand that issues like poverty, human rights, and gender equality are global in scope. They are issues faced by women everywhere. When we demand justice for women and children in Africa, we truly speak from the heart, seeking medicines and food on the table, not power for ourselves. People see that and they want to support it. If you were to ask me why I like to live in my small town, I would say because I'm part of a community. And you know what? I would give the same answer if you asked me why I am part of the grandmothers movement.
I'm an octogenarian, but age is not important. Let's just say I've learned a thing or two in my long life, and what I've learned lately makes me hopping mad. My friend Brenda, she says, outrage plus information equals action. Well, Prime Minister, a lot of us grannies are outraged. Some 13 million kids orphaned by AIDS in sub-Saharan Africa, most now looked after by their courageous, desperately poor grannies. Lots of sweet babies in Africa being born HIV positive. Most die before their second birthday. AIDS is the #1 killer of mothers and babies in sub-Saharan Africa. And here we are in Canada, sitting on a mountain of pills. Everybody wanting to send these generic medicines south so African families can have a fighting chance. So what happens? These life-saving meds are being held up by red tape. 1 shipment in 4 years. It makes me want to run through the House of Commons with my pinking shears. Prime Minister, you say improving mother and child health in developing countries is a top priority? Why don't you show you mean business and fix Canada's access to medicines regime and make it work? And while you're at it, give our fair share to the Global Fund to fight HIV, AIDS, TB, and malaria. Canada made a promise over 4 years ago. All parties voted to get life-saving, affordable meds to developing countries. Now, what kind of country reneges on a promise to children?
The Grandmothers Campaign has members of all political stripes, and some that don't claim to be political at all. But injustice rankles all of us. We raise funds, we raise awareness, and we raise hell, sometimes quietly, sometimes not. Thanks to the National Advocacy Committee and our NGO partners, we've got the information we need, and we know how to use it. We make presentations in the community, we visit our MPs, we rally school kids, we go to all candidates' meetings, and we send a lot of letters, emails, and postcards. In November 2009, a group of grandmothers went to Parliament Hill, made an impressive submission to the Senate, and changed the minds of a lot of MPs at the same time. Over 32,000 Canadians signed our petition, and it was presented in the House by 13 members of Parliament from all political parties.
My story is about how another woman's story inspired me to take a stand. Her name is Spiwe Hlope. She's an activist grandmother from Swaziland who cares for AIDS orphans. Spiwe's life has not been easy. Her father had 3 wives and 25 children. 17 of them have died from AIDS-related causes. Spiwe found out she herself was HIV positive. No educated, married, working mother had ever publicly declared her positive status. Spiwe and 4 other HIV-positive women started SWAPHO, Swaziland Positive Living, which advocates for and supports people affected by HIV/AIDS. I met Spiwe in 2008 when she came to Canada to join our march on Parliament Hill. I was struck by the determination and good humour of a woman who had flown halfway across the globe to hold governments everywhere accountable for the rights of women and children. Back home, Spiwe has organised 2 large marches in Manzini. In 2010, I was one of 42 Canadian grandmothers who went to Swaziland to join over 1,000 others from across Africa in the Solidarity March for grandmothers and the children in their care. We witnessed the empowerment of the African Go-Go's at their very first gathering. The grandmothers movement is built on mutual respect and solidarity, not charity. There's a word Africans use, Ubuntu. It means I am because we are. By acknowledging our connection to others, we affirm our own humanity.
I'm a member of the Hummingbird Grannies, Our name comes from a Quechua legend borrowed into Haida symbology. It's about a great forest fire. All of the animals ran out of the woods. They huddled in the edge of the forest, terrified of the heat, the flames, and the smoke. All but the hummingbird. She flew up to the stream, picked up a bead of water in her beak, and flew back to drop it on the fire. Back and forth she went, dropping the water bead by bead on the great fire. Finally, the bear asked her what she was doing. Without stopping, she answered, "I'm doing what I can." AIDS in Africa is a raging forest fire. The problems and the solutions are complex and long-term. The courageous African grandmothers who have buried their own children and now care for their grandchildren are hummingbirds. They're doing what they can. And so are their Canadian sisters who support them as they can and fight for systemic change, one drop at a time.
Grandmothers in Canada and Africa are making a difference in the future of Africa's next generation, in the conscience of Canadians, and in the way that older women are viewed in society. We're creating new images of what it's like to grow older in a democratic civil society, and that journey has endless possibilities. About 25 years ago, Gloria Steinem said, "Someday, an army of gray-haired women will quietly take over the earth." Well, that army's on the move now. You can join us.
We shall not give up the fight. We have only started. We have only started. We have only started. Together we'll have victory. Hand holding hand. Hand holding hand. Hand holding hand. Together we'll have victory. Hand holding hand. Hand holding hand. Hand holding hand. Never ever put to fight. We're about to win. We're about to win. We are about to win. Never ever put to fight. We're about to win. We're about to win. We are about to win. We shall not give up the fight. We have only started. We have only started. We have only started. We shall not give up the fight. We have only started. We have only started. We have only started. We shall not give up the fight. We have only started.